In this video, we are going to have a look at 4 different ultra wide angle lenses that you can use on your Nikon Z camera. Kia ora, good morning everyone, Richard Wong here. Today we are going to have a look at 4 different ultra wide angle lenses that you can use on your Nikon Z camera. 2 of the lenses are Nikon F mount and 2 of them are Nikon Z mount. But of course you can use the FT-Z adapter to use the F mount lenses on your Nikon Z camera. The 4 lenses we are looking at today are the Nikon 14-24 f2.8, which is the f-mount lens, and we have the Samyang Manufocus 40mm f2.8. This is a Z-mount lens, and another Z-mount lens we have here is the Nikon 14-30 f4, and the last one is another Samyang. This is the Samyang 14mm f2.8 autofocus lens for the f-mount. We are going to do some image quality comparison at 14mm focal length because this is the focal length that all these 4 lenses are common. But before that, let's have a look at the body design, build quality, and the operation of each of the 4 lenses. Let's start with the Nikon 14-24 first. This lens, I think if you are a Nikon user, you must have heard of it, you probably have used it, and you may also have one in your camera bag. This is the ultra wide angle lens that when it was released, I can't remember when it was, about 10 years or so ago, probably more than 10 years ago. It is the one that completely redefined what the ultra wide angle zoom lens is capable of. So it has been a workhorse lens for a lot of professional photographers, one of the 3 f2.8 zoom lens that you'll find in a lot of professional photographers' camera bag. And even today, 10 years or so, with so many other ultra wide angle zoom lens released after that, the Nikon is still one of the most popular ultra wide angle zoom lens in the market right now. The build quality of this lens is definitely very good. It has better seal and the lens just feels very solid. It's also the largest lens out of these 4 lenses, as you can see. It has an integrated lens hood, and you can see that the front element actually extrudes quite a bit. In terms of autofocus performance, it autofocuses pretty fast and pretty reliable even when you're using the FT-Z adapter on a Z6 or Z7. But at the same time, the autofocus noise is probably the loudest out of all these lenses. Well, when I say loud, it's not really that loud, but it is noticeably more noisy than the other autofocus lenses. Next, let's look at the Samyang lens. This is the Samyang 40mm f2.8 manual focus lens. This lens is for the Z mount. This is the only manual focus lens out of these 4. The manual focus ring just feels very nice, very smooth, and the tension feels pretty nice as well. The manual focus ring has quite a long travel. I think it's around 210 degrees or so. That allows you to do manual focus accurately. The aperture ring has clicks. I definitely really like it because a lot of the newer manual focus lenses on the market these days, the aperture ring is declicked. So for a photographer like me, I definitely prefer to have clicks on the aperture ring, and it feels very nice as well when you are going through the different aperture setting. The construction of the lens is very nice. It's very metal. I would even say this is the most solid construction out of these 4 lenses. Yes, I think it feels more solid than even the Nikon 14-24. Holding this lens and using it to take photos just feel absolutely fantastic. Next, we have this Nikon 14-30 f4 lens. This is the first ultra wide angle lens that Nikon created for the Nikon Z mount full frame mirrorless system. It has a collapsible design, as you can see. Right now it's in the collapsed form, and when it's in the collapsed form, it is a very small, very compact lens. You look at it, this is one of the smallest lens out of the 4, even though this is a zoom lens. You have to extend it before you can use it, so you have to turn the zoom ring here and then you can extend it. Not only it is small, it also feels quite light as well. It is definitely a lot lighter than the Nikon 14-24 f2.8 and also the Samyang manual focus lens. I think the size and the weight is quite similar to the Samyang 14mm autofocus lens. Build quality wise, it's also pretty solid, and it also has the weather seal. Oh, I forgot to mention, the Samyang manual focus also has weather seal. Actually, all 4 lenses, they all have weather seal, so it shouldn't be a problem if you want to use it to take some photo or video under a bit of rain. Also, when I try to extend or collapse the lens, there's a little bit of funny sound or feeling. I don't really know how to explain it, but it feels like there's some kind of suction or something that happens just before it's extended or it's collapsed. So it feels a little bit weird. Overall, I do feel like the build quality of this one is a little bit more plasticky than the other 3 lenses. If you like to use filter on your lens, this lens is the easiest one if you want to apply the filter, because it has the filter thread, it doesn't have the integrated lens hook, while the other 3, they all have the integrated lens hook, and also the front element of all the other 3 lenses all extrude quite a bit as well. The autofocus on this lens is excellent. The autofocus speed is very fast. The autofocus is also virtually silent, and if you want to use it to take video, you notice the autofocus transition is a lot smoother than the other 2 autofocus lenses. And now let's talk about the last lens, which is the Samyang 14mm f2.8 autofocus lens. This is the lens designed for the Nikon F mount, and this is the smallest lens out of the 4 and also one of the lightest lens out of these 4. It weighs very similar to the Nikon 1430 f4 lens. In terms of the build quality and finish, it's not as plasticky as the Nikon 1430, but it's also not quite as metal or heavy or solid as the Samyang manual focus lens. The autofocus operation is relatively smooth and quiet with this Samyang lens. However, I do notice that when used on the Nikon Z6 or Z7, the camera feels a little bit unstable. I noticed the EVF or the LCD screen, sometimes the brightness will flicker a little bit. Maybe this is just a firmware issue, because I do notice that Samyang has been keep releasing new firmware for their lenses. So hopefully we will see Samyang release another new firmware in the near future that would help improve the issue that I noticed with this lens. But apart from that, the lens feels very nice when I use it to take photos, and I really like the new design of the new Samyang lenses. It looks very modern and looks a lot more premium than the older Samyang lenses. Okay, now let's talk about the image quality, and as usual, we start with the image sharpness first, and let's look at the center sharpness. At 14mm f2.8, if you look at the center sharpness, I think the Nikon 1424 is the sharpest lens out of the 3 f2.8, the 1, 2, 3, these 3 lenses, while the manual focus Samyang is slightly softer than the autofocus Samyang. If we stop down to f4, then I would say the center sharpness of all these 3 lenses improved quite a lot, and the sharpness is actually very similar between all these 3 lenses. But in comparison, the Nikon 1430 f4 lens is actually quite a bit sharper compared to the other 3 f2.8 lens. When I put all the 4 photos side by side, I can easily tell this is a bit sharper than the other 3 lenses. If you look at the edges, at f2.8, I would say all 3 lenses are slightly soft. The Samyang manual focus lens is slightly sharper than the Nikon 1424 at the edge, and at the same time, the Samyang autofocus lens is slightly sharper than the Samyang manual focus lens. When we stop down to f4, again, all 3 f2.8 lens, the edge sharpness all improved quite a bit, and the sharpness now is very similar. I would probably say the Samyang manual focus lens this time is the sharpest out of these 3 f2.8 lenses. But when I look at the image from the Nikon 1430, again, the Nikon 1430 is quite a bit sharper than the other 3 lenses at the edge of the frame. Next, let's compare the flare resistance. All these 4 lenses, they have their own special coating applied to it, and I have done quite a few different flare resistant ghosting tests, and my conclusion is these 4 lenses, in terms of flare resistance, they are all very similar. Each of these lenses is like slightly better or worse in one area or other when it comes to flare resistance. So overall, it's actually quite hard to tell which one does better or worse than the other 3 lenses. The flare resistance of these 4 lenses are all very good. In terms of distortion, I have shot some brick wall photo again. Out of these 4 lenses, I think the Samyang magnifocus lens has a little bit more noticeable distortion. The Samyang autofocus is slightly better, but surprisingly it seems to be the 2 zoom lenses that seems to have better distortion control, at least at 14mm. The Nikon 1424 is slightly better than the Samyang, while the Nikon 1430 seems to be a bit better than the Nikon 1424. Okay, that was what I thought until I noticed that with the Nikon 14-30 f4 lens, there is actually the lens profile baked into the RAW file, and when you import it into Lightroom, it will just apply the correction regardless whether you have enabled or disabled the lens profile correction. So I did a bit of hacking and stripped out the lens profile information from the RAW file, and you can see that the 1430 actually has a bit of distortion once you have the lens profile stripped out from the RAW file. In terms of vignetting, out of these 4 lenses, this time is the Nikon 1430 seems to have the worst vignetting control. At f4, there is definitely quite a bit of noticeable vignetting, and even when I stop down to f5.6, the vignetting is still quite noticeable with the Nikon 1430 f4 lens. The Samyang lenses are better than the Nikon 1430. It is the Nikon 1424 that has the best vignetting control out of these 4. If you like shooting landscape photo after dark, then the quality or appearance of the Sunstar is probably one of the things that you are very interested in. And if you ask me, I think the Nikon 1430 has the most beautiful Sunstar out of the 4. I just love the shape of the Sunstar from this lens. And the Samyang autofocus lens, the Sunstar actually looks very similar compared to the Nikon, but it seems the Nikon has a more well-defined Sunstar. The edges, I just love the one from the Nikon a little bit more, but they are very similar. And the Nikon 1424, it looks a little bit too complicated, too messy to me. But as I said, this is a personal preference, but to me, I definitely love the Sunstar from these 2 more. And with the Samyang magnifocus lens, probably because it only has 6 aperture break, the Sunstar from the Samyang magnifocus lens doesn't look as appealing as the other 3 lenses. And now let's talk about the chromatic aberration. So this is one of the area that I have been testing it, repeatedly testing it quite a few times, because these 4 lenses, they all have very good chromatic aberration control. Even when I'm shooting some photo of very high contrast scene, maybe there's a sun behind a tree or something similar like that, I just never get really strong chromatic aberration at all. I only get very minimal amount of color fringing with all these 4 lenses. But if you really have to ask me to say which one is better, which one the worst, I would actually say that there seems to be slightly less chromatic aberration with the 2 Samyang, but the difference is very, very minor. I don't think chromatic aberration is a real problem with any of these 4 lenses. Okay, so let me do a quick conclusion and give you some of my thoughts about each of these 4 lenses. Let's start with the Nikon 1424 f2.8 lens first. Even though this lens has been released for quite a while, but you can still see this is a very competitive lens in terms of image quality when you compare to the other 3 lenses, which are all quite a bit newer lenses. The only area that the Nikon 1424 doesn't perform very well is the corner sharpness, but apart from that, in all the other area, the lens still perform very well, and in some area it's still better than the other 3 lenses. So that may be the reason why even today you can still find this lens in a lot of professional photographers' camera bag. Then let's talk about the other Nikon lens, the Nikon 1430 f4 lens for the Z mount. In terms of the image quality, I think overall I would rate this one is the best out of the 4 lenses. Everything apart from the vignetting is excellent with this lens. Sharpness is very good from center to the edges. Flare resistant, chromatic aberration, everything else is all very well controlled. Another very important thing about this lens is the size and the weight as well. So once you collapse the lens, it is a very compact lens for ultra wide angle lens that can go as wide as 40mm. This is a very, very small lens. So this is definitely excellent when you want to do a bit of traveling. And also if you want to shoot some video, the autofocus performance with this lens is definitely the smoothest and also the most quiet compared to the other autofocus lens that we are looking at today. Next, let's talk about this Samyang autofocus lens. While the overall image quality of this lens is probably not as good as the Nikon 1430, but if you want to have a compact and also affordable ultra wide angle lens, then this would be a very good choice because this lens is a lot cheaper than the Nikon 1430. And also this is the f-mount lens, so the disadvantage is that if you want to use it on the Z6, Z7, then you have to use the FTZ adapter before you can mount it on the camera. But on the other hand, if you are also shooting with a Nikon DSLR camera, then you can use it on both your DSLR and your mirrorless camera. This lens is definitely not a bad choice if you want an affordable ultra wide angle lens with autofocus for your Nikon cameras. Okay, the last lens I want to talk about is the Samyang manual focus lens. Overall image quality wise, it's not the best out of these four lenses, but consider the price of this lens is the cheapest, and it is quite a lot cheaper than especially the two Nikon lenses. You pay almost like 1/3 of the price compared to the Nikon lenses, and you get maybe 85% of image quality. So I think this is an excellent choice if you want good value for money ultra wide angle lens. Now this is a manual focus lens, so if you have never used a manual focus lens before, you may wonder how easy is it to do manual focus, and I can tell you it is very easy, especially with a mirrorless camera like the Z6 and Z7. Because of the EVF you have, you can always just turn on the peaking, or you zoom in the image when you are manual focus, and you can get the focus very precisely, very easily. And also because this is an ultra wide angle lens, so you have very deep depth of field. Even when you are shooting at f2.8, you still got a very deep depth of field. So it is very easy to do manual focus with this lens. Especially, I think most people who buy a 14mm lens is to use it for landscape. It make it even easier because most of the time you just pretty much turn it to infinity or almost infinity. If you stop down a little bit, if you're shooting at f4 or f5.6, then manual focus is super easy. And I also really like the build quality of this lens. The lens just feel very solid, very metal. It just feel more fun and more satisfying when I compare to the other autofocus lenses. So yeah, personally, if I have to buy one of these four lenses, I would probably choose the Samyang manual focus just because it is more fun and also a lot cheaper than the other three lenses. So this Samyang manual focus lens is probably my choice out of these four lenses. But what about you? Which of these four lenses would be your favorite ultra wide angle lens, and what is the reason? Feel free to leave a comment below and let me know what is your favorite lens, or if you have another favorite ultra wide angle lens that I have not included in this review. Let me know in the comment field below. And thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you found it informative, and I will see you in my next video.